Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, boys and girls, some stories just have to be seen in order to be believed, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because you're listening right now. You can subscribe to us. You can subscribe to the podcast. Give us that old 5-star rating, a like, and subscribe. Basically, wherever you get your podcasts, we're available over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, pretty much everywhere. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. You can find us over at Facebook, over at Twitter, and over at Instagram at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I say it a lot, but it is the most important, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, festivals, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. Boy, oh boy, we got a fun one on this episode. Coming out tomorrow on the Apple Plus streaming service. It is a new doc show. It's a 4-part series. It's a fun one. It's called The Big Conn. It tells the unbelievable story of Eric C. Conn and his brand of corrupt government officials who conspired together to ultimately steal over $500 million. Yes, you heard me right. $500 million. If you want to put your finger by your mouth when I say billion, you're allowed to do that. $1 billion in the largest U.S. government fraud in history. The Big Conn unfolds through two different perspectives or lenses, as it were. We get to see Conn's rose-colored perspective of himself as a globe-trotting, self-made James Bond type versus the reality that his family, friends, confidants, co-conspirators, victims, government officials, federal agents, and a lot of wives, and I mean a lot of wives, that he's had from around the world. It's really a fascinating story to watch unfold. And we can't recommend it highly enough, and we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with the directors, writers, and executive producers of the show, Mr. Brian Lazarte and Mr. James Lee Hernandez, to talk about sort of how they heard about this story, the origins of the show, and also into sort of the complex nature of doing research and producing a doc series like this. Because I mean, obviously, with the streaming services these days, this type of content is more popular than ever, and there's a reason why. This is highly entertaining true crime, but it's, you know, there's no murders. It's not, you know, it's not overly depressing either. It's really kind of amazing to watch unfold and just how this actually happened. And I mean, and these stories are unfurling, happen every day, really, in many ways. And paying attention to that sort of thing is really a fascinating thing. And we asked Brian and James about that and so very much more. But don't hesitate to check out The Big Conn on Apple TV Plus starting tomorrow, May 6th. But first, check out our talk with Brian and James, because between you and me, it's a pretty good one.
All right, first off, James, Brian, I just want to say thank you so much for the time today, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love Toronto, so I'm jealous.
Now, I mean, I love the show, man. My God, it was entertaining as all hell. I mean, I think I had to pick up my jaw several times throughout the 4 episodes just because this story is nuts. I guess my first question let's start with you, Brian. Like, I'm curious to find out how this story got presented to you guys to make it into a series.
So one of the producers who we have worked with over the years, Peter King, first told us about Eric several years ago when we were making McMillions. And, you know, just naturally we're like, okay, this is like a real life Saul Goodman type story. This larger than life attorney pulls off one of the largest social security scams in history, stealing over $550 million from the federal government. Like, yeah, naturally there's an interesting way in. But we just came to discover there was so much more to the story. And you've got whistleblowers, you've got a Wall Street Journal reporter who first kind of cracks the story, brings it to life, but then becomes part of the story. And we had seen like, little news snippets and pieces throughout the years that kind of talked about Eric, but no one had really done a deep dive, and no one had really brought to life Eric's point of view. And so that was a really important part of this process for us, was to make sure that we could include everyone's point of view, including Eric's, so that you could see just how large, how dense, how funny, but also how tragic the story really is.
No, for sure. And I mean, James, I'm kind of curious, because had you guys told this in a straight manner, it would have been a very different kind of show. Like, how important was it for you to not just have his point of view from all this, but to sort of imbue it with a sense of humor? Because I mean, that definitely, from my perspective, definitely elevates it from maybe some of the other stuff that's been being put out there right now.
Well, for what Brian and I really like to go for, and just in general, is we want to take people on the journey of the story. And there is a way where you start this story when Eric first starts his law practice back in the late 80s, early 90s, and then you go all the way through. But to us, it was really, we wanted to take people on the ride of what happens with the whistleblowers, what happens with Damian Paletta, the Wall Street Journal writer, and let those facts unravel by going through their story, because they really had an interesting fight to get this story out to the public, especially Sarah and Jennifer, the whistleblowers. And to us, we always find life is comedic and tragic. Like, in an instant, it can switch. And so we really like to show that it can be like that here. We're not trying to make fun of anybody. Quite the opposite. We just let funny characters and funny moments be funny. And when we need to, we can stop on a dime and also let you know that this thing can be tragic. So the way that we kind of lure you into this story that is very serious and has undertones of very serious issues that need to be worked out within the government, we kind of lure you in with the craziness of Eric and all of this stuff, but really want to be able to swing between those two comedic and tragic angles so that you really understand how all this feels and what people went through.
Now, I mean, for both of you, I'm kind of curious. I mean, especially when you're setting up the structure and trying to tell the whole story, how do you sort of, I guess, come to the structure? Because I could imagine, especially early on in the research stage, you would find these rabbit holes and these tangents that you'd have to go down and maybe have to sort of make adjustments on the fly. And like, I mean, there's parts of here, I mean, I could imagine you could have done whole episodes on some of these crazy stories that we're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, when we first brought the story to Apple TV Plus, it was like one idea for how to go about it. With the Big Conn, we always knew that it was going to be 4 parts for the documentary series. And, you experiment. It's a little trial and error. You have to, figure out, okay, what is, how do you build it? And we had probably 20 different versions of how we started this, series. Because, yeah, at least. And you realize after spending years involved in a story as dense as this, with, the whistleblowers and all the surprises that happen, that there's even too much that you can't fit into a documentary series. And so we actually have a companion podcast that we're also doing here at Fun Meter that is part of the series. It's an extension of the story, and it brings to life new characters, people who weren't a part of, the actual documentary series, extended moments, more context. It has manuscript moments that we couldn't include in the series as well. So we're really excited by the possibility of people experiencing all the things we did. I mean, selfishly, like we really enjoyed the story, as funny and as, we don't obviously enjoy the tragic side of the story, but we understand and respect the significance that tragedy has and how important it is for people to be aware of it. And so to be able to share that with everybody and people enter into the, world that a lot of people have been living themselves, but we've been experiencing from the outside, is a real pleasure. And we're really grateful to be in this position.
You see, I mean, now you're going to have me subscribe to the podcast, man. I can't wait to see that, because I mean, it's one of those things where when you're talking to him and he's rolling through his list of wives, or, oh no, yeah, he was running a brothel where there was a snake, and it's like, in the research room, were there moments that just, I could imagine the research room was both of you going back and forth, going, no, wait a minute, you got to come see this. No, you got to come see that. Like, how was that process in terms of sort of understanding the depth of this all? Because I mean, I can imagine before even you got started, you guys were floored with some of the stories you were hearing.
Absolutely. The stories in general. Well, first of all, the show is called The Big Conn because his name is Eric C. Conn. That alone is like how too perfect. If we had written that in a script for a movie, people would think it was too outlandish. But it was a constant amount of, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. Our entire team here at Fun Meter is just every single second we're going back and forth. Like, okay, this has to be a main focus. This has to be a main focus. Reading through the manuscript, seeing all those great things. And so we really took a long time. And the way Brian and I go about it is we really continually like write this thing out almost as if we're doing a scripted TV show, because we want to make sure that all the pieces fit in a way where it's not like one episode's 100% funny and fun and games, and then all the rest of it's depressing, or all of this is just seeming like we're making fun of this area. Like, we really want to lay this whole thing out and know that, look, this is how it really happened. This is the timeline that it happened within. And we're just going to take you on the ride of some of these crazy moments in between these really tense moments. And yeah, like try to put it all in. And some of the stuff was so outlandish that we were like, people might not even believe this is a real thing that happened, but it did.
No, I mean, Brian, I'm curious because I mean, documentary, and especially when you get to break it out in series like this, it feels like it's getting to push against maybe what people expect documentary to be, like, especially with the form of it all. Like, how is it for you guys as content creators to sort of work inside the doc space, but still have freedom to sort of embrace the funnier moments?
Oh, well, James and I are naturally attracted to these left of center stories that aren't your typical true crime type story.
Right.
And we always knew that there was going to be a lot of humor in this. And so that was something that we wanted to lean into. But at the heart of it, we also look at how do we humanize the story? How do we humanize each person that was a part of this? And so we would always just play with that, exploring of this character and that character to make sure that like people could see the three-dimensional side of, each person that was a part of this. And when you're playing with these, very cinematic elements, and we're bringing in people to help tell the story, we want to transport you there to the moment that affected so many people. And, the beauty of this era that we live in right now, and to have, the support of our team at Apple TV Plus, it was an obvious way to bring this story to life. You really need that, right? To like imagine what it was like to be working at Eric Conn's law complex of 25 trailers all stitched together. Like, it was part of some Legoland, set. So we're grateful that we have this moment to explore in this type of storytelling, but ultimately we want to make we're always at the heart want to be true to the people telling the story, that we're not really taking further narrative or infusing things that just didn't exist. But it is so crazy and wild. Why not bring it to life in the best way we can, and have you see what we see, like
for sure,
we're being told the story.
No, I mean, James, I'm curious because I mean, especially on a project like this, I got to imagine it's all encompassing and you guys are sort of in it, 24/7, 365. But how do you guys sort of keep your eyes open for what the next project might be? Because I mean, these stories that, like you say, you guys are drawn to are probably happening somewhere right now as we speak.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing. And one, Brian and I are highly, maybe overly focused, if you ask our friends and family, on the story at hand. But we're very fortunate. We have a fantastic team here at Fun Meter. Nicole offers our head of development. She's really always really eyes open for new things. We're both very inquisitive and are constantly looking at things. Peter King, who is the EP on this, originally brought us this very early on while we're doing McMillions. We have a great like team of people that we work with, but at the same time, we're just always genuinely curious. And it is a very specific style of story that we like, that this left of center, non-murder, non-wrongfully accused, jailed for 20 years type of true crime. So we just keep our ear to the street and have a fantastic support, even with our agency UTA and our management company at Management 360.
No, I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, I mean, I've got to ask, because like you said earlier, like if you had written this as sort of a narrative pitch, like you would have been thrown out of the building because it's insane. What made you guys, like, what was the kind of work that made you guys want to get into this business to tell these stories that are ever so slightly off center?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think it's evolved, at least for me personally, but like any Coen Brothers movie, any dark comedy is, it's the wheelhouse that I thoroughly enjoy personally. And I know that James and I have very similar tastes when it comes to these types of things. And it was, I think we're just so fortunate that we're able to do that in a documentary medium.
Yeah. How about you, James?
For me, somewhat similar. It's the growing up loving the types of films and TV shows. I mean, I look at it similar to the way that Quentin Tarantino looks at all of his movies as comedies.
Right.
And it's the same thing where like life can be absolutely insane and tragic and wild, but also there's a certain funny nature to all of it. And that's the thing that we really go for. That's the thing personally I really like, is to show that life can be light, but also that there are very serious undertones to all decisions, all things, and always very, very curious about why people make the decisions that they make, and living in the gray area of, life isn't just cops and robbers. Even the people that are the worst, a lot of times have motivations that are somewhat positive and doesn't make them absolutely terrible people. So
yeah,
that's the world that's very intriguing to me.
Well, I mean, guys, this is a tragic, hilarious sort of train wreck of a story that you just can't look away from. And the Big Conn is just so much fun. And James, Brian, thank you so much for the time today. This was fantastic. And again, congrats on the show.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. This is great.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.